I sat in my rental car outside my childhood home, watching relatives stream through the front door with wine bottles and gift bags. My brother Derek was getting engaged, and I was about to walk into a house where I had always been the family disappointment, the son who played with books like a child. That is what my mother told everyone. But tonight would be different. I just did not know it yet. Before we begin, let me know where you are watching from. Hit that like button and subscribe if you have not already. And if you have ever felt invisible in your own family, stay with me because this story might feel familiar. Growing up in a small town in Ohio, I learned early that my family measured worth in very specific ways. My older brother Derek played football. He scored touchdowns. He brought home trophies that my parents displayed proudly on the mantle. My father Harold went to every single one of his games, cheering from the bleachers until his voice went hoarse. My mother Gloria would bake cookies for the team and beam with pride whenever anyone mentioned her firstborn son. I was different. While Derek was out on the field, I was in my bedroom surrounded by stacks of books. By the time I was 10 years old, I had started writing short stories in spiral notebooks. I would stay up past my bedtime with a flashlight under the covers, creating worlds that existed only in my imagination. To me, those stories were everything. To my mother, they were a waste of time. I remember one afternoon when I was 12. I had just won a statewide writing competition. My teacher had submitted one of my short stories without telling me, and it placed first out of over 3,000 entries. When I came home with a certificate and the small trophy, I ran to find my mother in the kitchen. She glanced at the certificate, nodded once, and said, "That is nice, Benjamin. Now go wash up for dinner." She did not attend the award ceremony. She did not hang the certificate anywhere. It ended up in a drawer in my room underneath old report cards and forgotten birthday cards from distant relatives. Meanwhile, Derek's football achievements covered every wall. His jerseys were framed. His photographs smiled down from the living room, the hallway, even the bathroom. I used to joke that you could not use the toilet in our house without Derek watching you from some team photo. My father was not cruel. He was simply absent in his own way. He never said anything negative about my writing, but he never said anything positive either. He would sit in his armchair reading the newspaper while my mother made her opinions known, and he never once stood up for me. His silence spoke volumes. As we grew older, the divide between Derek and me only widened. He went to college on a sports scholarship, then transitioned into real estate when his athletic career did not pan out. Within a few years, he was selling properties and making what seemed like good money. He bought a flashy car. He wore expensive watches. My mother could not stop talking about how successful her firstborn had become. What she did not know, or perhaps chose not to see, was that Derek was constantly in debt. He switched jobs frequently, always chasing the next big commission that never quite materialized. But he was excellent at keeping up appearances, and in my family appearances were everything. I took a different path. I studied literature in college, then spent years working as an editor at a small publishing house. The pay was modest. My apartment was tiny. But every night after work, I would sit at my desk and write. My first novel took me 4 years to complete. 4 years of late nights, rejected drafts, and moments of crippling self-doubt. When it was finally published, something remarkable happened. People actually read it. The book gained traction slowly at first, then faster. By the time my second novel came out, I had developed a dedicated readership. Critics started paying attention. Awards came. But through all of this, I never told my family. Why would I, every time I had tried to share something about my writing life, my mother would change the subject or make a dismissive comment? Derek would laugh and call me a dreamer. My father would simply nod and return to his newspaper. After a while, I stopped trying. So when my third novel hit the New York Times bestseller list, I kept it to myself. Only my best friend Marcus, who also happened to be my literary agent, knew the full extent of my success. He kept urging me to tell my family, but I always refused. They did not deserve to know. And honestly, I did not think they would care, even if they did. 2 years passed without me visiting home. Then Derek called to announce his engagement to a woman named Amanda. Despite everything, he was still my brother. So I booked a flight from Portland back to Ohio for the engagement party. Standing outside the house now, I took a deep breath and walked inside. My mother, Gloria, greeted me with a brief hug that felt more like an obligation than an embrace. "Benjamin, you made it," she said, already looking past me toward the other guests. "Derek and Amanda are in the living room. Go say hello." My father appeared, nodded at me once, and then wandered off toward the backyard where some of his buddies were gathered around a cooler of beer. I had been home for less than a minute and already felt like a ghost. As I made my way through the crowd, my Aunt Lorraine intercepted me. She was my mother's sister, a woman who had made a career out of comparing her nieces and nephews to each other and finding them all lacking in various ways. "Benjamin," she said, her voice loud enough for several people nearby to hear. "Still doing that reading thing for work? What is it you do again? Organize books at a library or something?" I felt my jaw tighten, but kept my voice calm. "I work with books, yes. Writing and editing." She said, in a tone that made clear she found this answer unsatisfying. "Well, at least Derek is doing something practical with his life." I excused myself and found a quiet corner of the room, wondering how long I would have to stay before I could politely leave. The engagement party was in full swing. Roughly 40 people filled my parents' house, a mixture of relatives, family friends, and colleagues of Derek from the real estate world. My mother had decorated everything elaborately with flowers and banners celebrating the happy couple. She moved through the crowd like a queen, holding court accepting compliments on her wonderful son. I stood near the back of the room, nursing a glass of water, when someone approached me. She was young, maybe late 20s, with an open, curious face. It took me a moment to realize this must be Amanda Derek's fiancée. "You must be Benjamin," she said, extending her hand. "I have heard a lot about you." I shook her hand, wondering what exactly she had heard. Probably nothing flattering. "Nice to meet you, Amanda. Congratulations on the engagement." "Thank you." She tilted her head, slightly studying me. "Derek mentioned you work with books. That sounds fascinating. I am an English teacher, so I love anything to do with literature." For a moment, I felt a flicker of genuine interest. It had been so long since anyone in this family context had expressed curiosity about my work. "I do some writing and editing," I said carefully. "Mostly novels." "Really? What kind of novels?" Before I could answer, Derek appeared and wrapped an arm around Amanda's waist. "There you are, babe. My uncle wants to meet you." He glanced at me with a smirk. "You two getting acquainted? Do not let my brother bore you with his book stuff." Amanda looked like she wanted to continue our conversation, but Derek was already steering her away. She glanced back at me apologetically before disappearing into the crowd. A little while later, my mother called everyone to gather in the living room. She had prepared a speech, she announced, to honor her son and his beautiful bride-to-be. I leaned against the doorframe, already bracing myself for what was coming. "Derek has always been my pride and joy." My mother began, her voice carrying across the silent room. "From the moment he was born, I knew he was destined for great things. He was a star athlete, a natural leader, and now a successful businessman. He knows how to work hard, how to provide, how to build a real life." She paused, and I watched her eyes scan the room until they found me. "Unlike some people," she continued, "who spend their time buried in books like children who refuse to grow up." Derek understood early on that life is about being practical, about making money, about building something tangible. Several people in the crowd chuckled. A few glanced in my direction. I felt heat rising to my face, but said nothing. This was not new. I had been hearing variations of this speech my entire life. After the applause for Derek died down, the humiliation continued. My Aunt Lorraine had been emboldened by my mother's words and decided to pile on. "Benjamin," she called out loudly, "how old are you now?" 32 and still renting. Still single, still trying to write that book of yours. My mother nodded. He has been working on some book for years now. Who knows if it will ever get finished? And even if it does, who would read it? Derek laughed from across the room. My brother is an artist, and you know what they say about artists. They are all broke. More laughter. I stood there absorbing it all. My hands clenched at my sides. I could have said something. I could have told them the truth right then. But I did not want to make a scene at Derek's engagement party. Even after everything, he was still my brother. "I'm doing fine," I said quietly. "Thank you all for your concern." The conversation moved on, but the damage was done. I slipped outside to the back porch, desperate for fresh air. A few minutes later, Amanda found me there. "I am so sorry," she said, sitting down beside me on the porch steps. "That was awful. I had no idea your family was like this." I shrugged, trying to appear unbothered. "I am used to it." "That does not make it okay." She was quiet for a moment. "Can I ask you something? What do you actually write? You started to tell me earlier, but we got interrupted." I looked at her. This woman who was about to marry into my family, and for some reason I felt compelled to be honest. "I write literary fiction, novels about people trying to find meaning and connection in difficult circumstances." "That sounds beautiful." She leaned forward slightly. "I love literary fiction. Actually, I am teaching a novel right now with my students that has completely captured their attention. It is called The Weight of Quiet Rivers. Have you heard of it?" My heart stopped. That was my book. The one that had spent 12 weeks on the bestseller list. The one that was being adapted into a film. The one that had won the National Book Award. But Amanda did not know that. She had no idea she was sitting next to the author. "I have heard of it," I said carefully. "It is absolutely stunning," she continued enthusiastically. "The way the author writes about family trauma and healing it is just so real. My students cannot stop talking about it." I opened my mouth to say something anything but. Before I could respond, Derek's voice called from inside. "Amanda, come back in. We are cutting the cake." She stood up reluctantly. "I guess I should go, but I really want to talk more about this later. I feel like you might actually appreciate literature the way I do." She disappeared inside, leaving me alone with the weight of everything I had not said. I pulled out my phone and called Marcus. He answered on the second ring. "How is the family reunion from hell going?" he asked. "About as expected. My mother told a room full of people that I play with books like a child. My aunt asked if I have finished writing that book of mine yet. Derek called me a broke artist." Marcus sighed. "Ben, you need to tell them. Your book is number 3 on the bestseller list right now. Number 3. You just won a National Book Award. You have a movie deal. They do not deserve to know. Maybe not. But you deserve to stop being treated like garbage by people who have no idea who you actually are." I looked up at the stars scattered across the Ohio sky. Even if I told them, they would find a way to make it small. They always do. We hung up a few minutes later. I stayed on the porch feeling like a stranger in the place where I had grown up. Dinner was served at a long table that stretched through the dining room. Everyone took their seats with Derek and Amanda at the head of the table and my parents flanking them on either side. I found a spot near the end, as far from the center of attention as possible. The conversation during dinner revolved almost entirely around Derek. My mother recounted his achievements as if she were reading from a highlight reel. The new apartment he had just purchased, the luxury car he was leasing, the major business deal he was about to close that would be worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. Derek basked in the attention, adding details and embellishments that I suspected were mostly exaggerated. Amanda sat beside him, smiling politely, though I noticed her eyes occasionally drifting toward me with an expression I could not quite read. Then my mother turned her attention in my direction. "Benjamin," she said, and the way she said my name made it sound like an accusation. "When are you going to accomplish something I can actually tell people about? Those books you write, does anyone even buy them? Or do they just sit in a drawer somewhere?" I kept my eyes on my plate. "My work is going fine, Mom." "Fine is not impressive, Benjamin. Fine is not something I can brag about at church or tell my friends. Your brother is about to close a deal that will set him up for life. What do you have to show for yourself at 32 years old?" I said nothing. There was no point. "I just do not understand," she continued, "why you could not follow Derek's example. Get a real job. Make real money. Do something practical instead of hiding away with your stories." Around the table, relatives nodded along or looked at me with varying degrees of pity and disapproval. This was the moment I had experienced countless times before. The moment where I was supposed to feel ashamed to apologize for my choices, to promise to do better. But something was different this time. Maybe it was the accumulation of years of this treatment. Maybe it was hearing my mother belittle me in front of Amanda, a stranger who had shown me more genuine interest in 5 minutes than my family had in decades. Whatever the reason, I felt something shifting inside me. Not anger exactly, more like a quiet resolve. I still said nothing, but I was done absorbing their words as if they were true. At the other end of the table, Amanda had pulled out her phone. I noticed her typing something, her brow furrowed in concentration. She seemed to be searching for something specific. A moment later, her expression changed. Her eyes widened. Her hand trembled slightly as she scrolled through whatever she had found. She looked up at me, then at my mother, then back at me. "Excuse me," Amanda said, her voice cutting through the chatter. The table fell silent. "I need to ask something." She turned to face me directly. "Benjamin, are you the author of The Weight of Quiet Rivers?" The silence that followed was absolute. 40 people stared at me, waiting. I took a breath. "Yes, I wrote that." Amanda held up her phone, her voice growing stronger. "I just searched your name, Benjamin Ward, author. This book," she pointed at her screen, "has been on the New York Times bestseller list for 12 weeks. It is in the top 3 right now. There are articles about you everywhere." She began reading aloud. Benjamin Ward wins National Book Award for The Weight of Quiet Rivers. Benjamin Ward's novel sells over 2 million copies worldwide. Film adaptation announced major studio-attached production beginning next year. She looked around the table, then back at her phone. "There is an interview with you on NPR. There is a profile in The Atlantic. You have been featured in literary magazines all over the country." The silence continued. I watched my mother's face drain of color. Derek stared at me as if seeing me for the first time. Aunt Lorraine grabbed her own phone and started searching. "Oh my goodness," she whispered. "It is true. It is all true." Another relative chimed in. 2 million copies, Benjamin. Why did you never say anything?" My mother finally found her voice, though it came out weak and uncertain. "Benjamin, is this real?" I looked at her. This woman who had spent my entire life telling me I was wasting my time, that I would never amount to anything, that I was the family disappointment. and I felt an unexpected calm wash over me. Yes, Mom, it is real. I have published 3 novels. The most recent one is a bestseller. I won a National Book Award last year. My work is being adapted into a film. Derek shook his head slowly. Why did you never tell us? Why did you never tell me? Because you never asked, I replied, my voice steady. Every time I tried to talk about my writing, you and Mom would laugh it off or change the subject. You made it clear that what I did was not worth your attention. So eventually I stopped trying to share it with you. I stood up from the table. I was not shouting. I was not crying. I was simply speaking the truth that had been buried inside me for 32 years. I spent my whole life being told I was a failure, being compared to Derek and found lacking, being treated like an embarrassment at every family gathering. And through all of that, I kept writing, not to prove anything to any of you, but because writing is who I am. It is what I love. It is the thing that makes me feel alive. I looked at each face around the table. I do not need your approval. I stopped needing it a long time ago. I am not telling you this to brag or to make you feel bad. I am telling you because you deserve to know that your silence and your mockery did not break me. I built a life I am proud of with or without your support. I turned to my mother. Mom, I love you. I always have. But I do not need you to be proud of me anymore. I learned how to be proud of myself. Tears were streaming down my mother's face now. For a moment, I almost stayed, almost sat back down and tried to comfort her. But I had done that my whole life. I had swallowed my hurt to keep the peace. I had made myself small so others could feel large. Not anymore. I grabbed my jacket from the back of my chair and walked toward the door. As I passed Amanda, I stopped. Thank you, I said quietly. You are the first person in this family who actually saw me. She nodded, her own eyes glistening. I am sorry, Benjamin. I am so sorry. I walked out the front door, got in my rental car, and drove away into the night. And for the first time in as long as I could remember, I felt free. The flight back to Portland felt like traveling between 2 different worlds. I stared out the window at the clouds below and thought about everything that had happened. Part of me felt vindicated. Part of me felt sad. Mostly, I just felt exhausted. In the days that followed, I threw myself back into my work. My 4th novel was taking shape, and the words came easier than they had in years. It was as if confronting my family had unlocked something inside me, some reservoir of creative energy that had been dammed up by decades of resentment. My phone buzzed constantly with messages from relatives. Aunt Lorraine sent a long text about how she always knew I was talented. Cousins I had not spoken to in years suddenly wanted to reconnect. I did not respond to any of them. Not yet. My mother called multiple times that first week. I let every call go to voicemail. I was not ready to talk to her. I was not sure I would ever be ready. Marcus came over one evening with a bottle of wine and a knowing look. So, he said, settling onto my couch, how does it feel to finally drop the mic on your family? I laughed, though it came out more tired than amused. Honestly, I feel relieved, and also sad. Sad that it took 32 years to say what I should have said a long time ago. You said it when you were ready. That is what matters. We sat in comfortable silence for a while. Then Marcus spoke again. For what it is worth, I am proud of you. Not just for the books or the awards. For standing up for yourself. That takes more courage than most people realize. As the weeks passed, I began to heal. I started keeping a journal, writing down my thoughts and feelings about my family, my childhood, my journey to this point. The anger slowly drained away, replaced by something that felt almost like acceptance. Not forgiveness exactly. Not yet. But an understanding that my family's limitations were their own, not mine. About a month after the engagement party, I received an email from Amanda. It was long and thoughtful, apologizing on behalf of the family and sharing what had happened after I left. She wrote that my mother had cried for hours, that Derek had been silent for days, processing everything. Eventually, he admitted to Amanda that he had always been jealous of me. Jealous that I had the courage to pursue my passion, while he had taken the safe route and still ended up unsatisfied. Amanda also told me that she had assigned my other novels to her advanced students, that they were reading my words in classrooms across her school district, that my stories were making a difference in young lives. 3 months after the engagement party, I finally called my mother. The conversation was awkward at first, long pauses, halting sentences, but slowly we found our way to something resembling honesty. "I did not know how to support you," my mother admitted. "I was scared you would fail. I was scared you would be poor and unhappy. I thought if I pushed you towards something practical, I was protecting you. I did not realize I was hurting you instead." "I understand," I said, and surprisingly, I meant it. "But Mom, I need you to understand something too. I do not need you to understand my work. I just need you to respect my choices. I need you to stop comparing me to Derek. I need you to see me as my own person, not as a disappointment." There was a long pause. Then quietly she said, "I can try." It was not a perfect resolution. Real life rarely offers those. But it was a beginning. I sit now at my desk in my small Portland apartment, watching rain streak down the window as I write the opening chapter of my new novel. My phone buzzes with a text message. It is from my mother. "I read your book, the whole thing. I stayed up all night. Benjamin, I had no idea. I am so proud of you." I stare at the message for a long moment. 3 months ago, these words would have meant everything to me. Now they feel like a nice addition to a life I have already learned to love without them. I type a simple reply. "Thank you, Mom. That means a lot." Then I set the phone aside and return to my writing. Here is what I have learned through all of this. Sometimes the people who should believe in us the most are the last ones to see our worth. We spend years, sometimes decades, waiting for their approval, bending ourselves into shapes that might finally earn their respect. But the truth is, we cannot control when or if that moment ever comes. What we can control is how we see ourselves. We can choose to believe in our own gifts even when others cannot. We can build lives that fulfill us even without the applause we crave. We can learn to be proud of ourselves, independent of anyone else's opinion. My mother's text sits on my phone, a small reconciliation after years of pain. It is not nothing, but it is also not what saved me. What saved me was refusing to give up on myself, even when everyone around me already had. So if you are out there right now feeling unseen by your own family, feeling like you will never be enough, no matter how hard you try, I want you to know this. You do not need their eyes to know you are standing in the light. You just need your own. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever felt invisible in your own family? Did you ever have a moment where the people who doubted you finally realized they were wrong? Share your story in the comments below. Your experience might help someone else who is going through something similar. If this story resonated with you, please give it a like and share it with someone who might need to hear it. And if you have not already hit that subscribe button so you do not miss more stories like this. Thank you so much for spending this time with me. I hope you walk away from this feeling a little more seen, a little more valued, and a lot more confident in your own path. Take care of yourselves and never stop believing in who you are meant to become.